Hello, I'm John O'Loughlin. Welcome to McDuff Lives. Well, most of the country is expecting a great big snowstorm and battening down for it. Over in Davos, President Trump pulled off a bit of a snow job. Let's talk about it. All right, Marcia Keith, welcome back to McDuff Lives on our Friday live chat.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, as always, on Fridays. It's good to be here with you and with everybody in the chat room and everybody not chatting, just watching. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, it's great to have some people that I hadn't seen in a while joining in the chat room. I'm very happy to see folks that followed me back before my first channel got struck, and it goes back a long ways now. So it's a great community. The Ospreys, we call it.
That's right. Always nice to have old friends with us.
Yep, Screaming Ospreys.
The Screaming Ospreys, indeed. Well, the Ospreys are down in South America, or at least the Caribbean, enjoying the weather down there, and maybe they're sort of watching what's going on.
Sipping a cool drink.
That's right. A fish-flavored pina colada.
Yes, yes. Well, speaking of fantasies,
Ooh, that's a nice segue.
the idea of the United States suddenly owning Greenland became the biggest thing in the news for what, a whole week?
Yeah, I suppose so. Maybe not quite a week.
And
although it's been around since he was elected.
But the whole thing distracted us from everything else that was going on in the world. A lot of stuff that's gone on that nobody's even known about yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is the hidden story of Davos, is what did all these tech billionaires decide upon is going to happen next, the next way that they can suck the life out of the rest of us.
Good point. Good point. Exactly. What else happened in Davos besides Greenland? Because everything that I saw was just about Greenland or, powerful men sniping at each other on social media.
Yes, yes. And it's such a fascinating time to be alive when we have this. I mean, from my point of view, okay, I've been studying this for a while from the point of view of there is a deep state, or I really prefer to call it the empire, the empire that owns most of everything already and just trying to control the rest of us. That dark picture. Trump looks like a knight in shining armor charging up against it, with his lance and on his charger. And the way that he manages to do this is amazing. It's mystical. It's like all the powers that were behind Biden, all the powers behind Obama and Clinton and on, all of that big monolithic control bureaucracy, he's fighting against it.
Mm-hmm.
And for all the other reasons that I can't stand him, I still have to say bravo for fighting against it.
Not only that, I think that he has managed to take a unique to him approach. I don't know, maybe that's redundant. Anyway, because I think that all of his predecessors have had to behave in a stately manner, speak in a stately manner, have a certain level of dignity. And I think that one of Trump's great strengths is this willingness to be a bit of a buffoon, because it gives him the opportunity to make outrageous statements and use them as negotiating tactics. He knows very well what he's doing. And he says these outrageous things, and people laugh at him, but it works. It absolutely works. And I think in the past, there have been candidates who behaved outrageously, and it got them in trouble, and it got them discredited. But somehow, and maybe it has to do with money and power, when he first ran back in 2016, and he would say these outrageously ridiculous things like, everybody loves me. It doesn't matter what I do. They love me. And I could stand on the street and shoot somebody and they'd still love me. When he would say things like that, it only got him more attention. And he has really managed to use it to his advantage. I think he is and I think he's very shrewd, very, very shrewd. And he has not, okay, I'm going to say something truly outrageous. And this comes from somebody from a radio background, me. He's the Howard Stern of politics.
Whoa.
That just hit me. Howard Stern broke all the rules back in the 80s when he became a household name around the country, because he's only on in New York City, yet somehow or another, everybody knew who Howard Stern was. And then he got syndicated and more people started listening to him, and everybody knew who Howard Stern was. And he was so different because he would say and do these outrageous things. He would break every rule in radio. And at the time I was working in radio, and we were all going, whoa, what is this person doing? And it worked for him. It got him where he is today. And I think in a lot of ways, that's Trump. He's not following anybody else's rules. He's doing it, dare I say, his way.
Wow, that was really interesting and well said.
Thank you.
I think Trump, so many people think he's not very bright, that he's in mental decline, and, that he's, famous people like Jeffrey Sachs, this pundit that's everywhere saying Trump is, he's kind of a egomaniac in just about calls him almost something between senile and crazy. And I don't know if Jeffrey Sachs really thinks that way, or does he have inside information? Does he really know this? Or is he just blinded by his view of the world, which, I will say I think he is, because I watch Jeffrey Sachs from time to time, and this is somebody who, has a long history of participation in
politics
in geopolitics
and diplomacy. Yeah.
So he is in favor of the Sustainable Development Plan. So this makes him an ally of Klaus Schwab, and this is crazy. But at the same time, he's a very strong critic of empire, and the U.S. empire in particular. So I think that his bias is driving the way he evaluates Trump's competence. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people, they have, I always get it wrong, deranged Trump syndrome, DTS.
TDS.
Why do I do that?
Because you are not infected.
Maybe that's it. But yeah, so that everything Trump does, they're going to immediately assume it's stupid, it's wrong. He's a buffoon. He's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's orange man bad. And they cannot see, they refuse to see that this guy is very, very cunning. And if I can just add, his shrewdness often works to our advantage because he is trying to make the United States the strongest power on the globe. Unquestionably. He's got to be number one. He's got to be the biggest, the toughest, the meanest, the baddest, the whateverest. And there is benefit to us for that.
You know, I'm tempted to launch into a lot of my ideas that I've had since my show on the Empire of Liberty, and the idea of that comes from Thomas Jefferson, of that, you know, no, America is not just going to sit here on the coast. We're going to expand. We're going to spread the good news of liberty, which is this new thing that people can do things on their own without having to get permission or have to, you know, the idea of having this sense of freedom they felt it was just such a unique gift to them that they felt that they should try to spread it, let it spread. And that idea of Jefferson and those kind of aristocratic upper class thinkers that contributed so much to our revolution also happened to be the ones that owned slaves, and they owned big farms and plantations, and they felt that that was a good culture for the time. Although every single one of them said that slavery is bad, and we need to phase it out. They believed very much in the human rights of those enslaved people. It's just that they felt it was impractical and would be awful to try to do it at that time, mostly. So that big scar on the reputation of these Jeffersonian founding fathers obscures the idea of the Empire of Liberty, because you don't even look into Jefferson once you realize, oh, he was a slaveholder, and you know, all of the other signers of the Declaration of Independence from the South were. So all I'm trying to say is the idea of Empire of Liberty comes back to mind when I see what Trump is doing, because yes, he says, I don't need no international law. I don't need no international law. You know, this sounds like a mafioso in a crime movie, but that's the type of speech that you're talking about. That's the Howard Stern diplomacy speech. You know, I don't need no effing, you know,
stinking.
Thank you.
I don't need no stinking international law.
Thank you. Well, what does that really say? It says that the national interest of the United States always is going to surpass any idea of international law. And we haven't signed away anything that constricts us. In fact, we have announced and put into practice for over 200 years this Monroe Doctrine that says that, hey, if it's in the Western Hemisphere and it looks like a threat, we're not going to allow it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when President Trump identifies a threat, it's consistent with U.S. policy for the past 200 years to go and do something about it, including military action.
Right.
So unless the Congress wants to say no, there isn't really any restriction on Trump's ability to talk like this, other than the War Powers Resolution, which, you know, hopefully we'll put some brakes on if he does something really crazy. But what he's doing is, in fact, something that gives me the hope that here's the deal I want. Okay, I'm going to tell you my deal. I want an empire of liberty in which all of us get the rights guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution, no matter where where you live. It could be you can be part of the empire of liberty in any place in the world. Every individual has the rights that are guaranteed by the Constitution, and the courts are going to enforce those rights over everything else. There's not going to be surveillance of citizens. Citizens will not be surveilled. There will be strict laws against it, and the law will be governed by the local sheriff. And the highest law in the county is going to be the sheriff, and not some federal, FBI police that's sneaking around taking pictures or trying to catch
Right.
criminals.
Yeah.
I want one basic law enforcement agency in my jurisdiction, and I want the rest of them out, and I want to stop all this espionage that's going on all over the place. I said, let's stop enabling all the spooks, all the spying. If we say we're not going to spy on those other countries anymore, that's an assertion of, hey, you know what? We're strong. We don't have to worry about what you guys are doing. We got our plans. We're going to take care of ourselves. We are a sovereign country, so don't worry about us. And we won't worry about you because, if push comes to shove, we do have the upper hand, and I hope you know it. So you go do you, and we're going to do us, and we're going to set our citizens free from all this crazy surveillance, and trust in the human side of the citizens that Jefferson was so confident in. Let's regain that idea of liberty within what you could call an empire. And I think we have to call it an empire, because there's so many other empires out there that if you don't establish boundaries and say inside of this is ours, then you're going to fall just like any small little country in Eastern Europe or Africa or anywhere else that can't stand up on its own.
Well, I mean, it's a lovely idea. It's a lovely notion, and I'm totally in favor of that. Though it raises more questions of all kinds as it relates to economics and trade and human rights, our responsibility as global humans to protect those who are being abused and who are not given the opportunity to enjoy liberty. There's a lot of questions there, but the way you describe it, it's a nice start.
Yeah, I mean, that was the idea 250 years ago, at least in a lot of people's minds. And it's not just the Southerners either, it's New England as well. New York calls itself the Empire State, because at that time the idea of empire was, let's do it, let's expand.
Well, here's an interesting comment. Prester John, hello, Prester John. He says, liberty, Trump has violated the Constitution and international law on numerous occasions. How is this not glaringly obvious? Well, I think that John did address his attitude towards international law. I do agree that there are some constitutional issues with some of the things that Trump does. And, we have our courts to work that out. And there's all kinds of court activity that's happening. And I get discouraged from time to time when there are court rulings that uphold what I consider to be unconstitutional actions by the executive. But I also am optimistic that ultimately our Constitution will prevail.
I'm afraid of it. I'm afraid that it won't, because I don't think the citizens are awake enough and aware enough of what's at stake here. I think Prester John's comment, let's put it up there just so I can. Liberty, Trump has violated the Constitution and international law. Yeah. All right. As far as the Constitution is concerned, okay, that's all been given to him by Congress when they passed the Patriot Act and when they passed the War Powers Resolution. And by constituting him as practically a war president, as a result of 9/11, the war on terror, all of these things that happened to these black swan events, that suddenly we've now got a more of a powerful executive and more of a police state. This whole progress that somehow people don't see it as a pattern, and so, oh my God, it's Trump. Let's just, Trump is bad. Get rid of Trump and we'll be fine. No, Trump is either a cog in the wheel or a major part of the big program, but he is not the big program. He is not the guy that's in charge of the economy. He's not in charge of the oil companies, and I think that's one of the big things is people just underestimate the need for oil and gas around the world is just phenomenal. And so the people that control those industries have tremendous power and have had ever since Churchill turned the British Navy into an oil driven navy. So all of that power that exists, no matter who is the president, no matter who, this is the big deep state problem that we have.
Yes.
And so I think when we look at Trump and say, well, he did something that's unconstitutional, you could argue it, you could maybe even get it to the Supreme Court, but I don't think that without Congress stepping up, that there's going to be any changes. It is Congress that's supposed to say, this is what the law is. This is where the boundaries are.
I don't know. I think Congress makes the laws, but the courts interpret the laws.
That's
so
true.
I think it's up to the courts to say what the boundaries are.
No. Well, ultimately, yes, but it's Congress that initiates what the law is.
Right.
So if I pass a law that says the president cannot send military force across to other countries without my permission, that's the law that he has to obey.
Right.
And now then he can go to court and say, well, no, that's too restrictive. I can't do that. And then, of course, the judges have the final say because the Supreme Courts are final because they're infallible.
Well, Brightmore notes Trump also has a pending Supreme Court decision regarding his ability to fire the Fed Reserve's Lisa Cook. Yeah, I saw a headline where it said, based on the arguments, that the thinking is that they aren't going to be likely to uphold the firing and that they're going to support her. Brightmore also notes Trump is suing Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan for summarily closing Trump's bank accounts and activities during his first term.
Oh, it was
no,
back then?
it wasn't. It wasn't. It was in 2021. It was right after the January 6th events that JP Morgan closed all of his accounts.
Wow.
Right.
They debanked him.
It was right after January.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't know why we didn't know that before now. I guess he was just sandbagging it,
Yeah. Or not making a big issue of it until he had all of the legal steps in place so that he could then. And I read that he is asking for $5 billion in damages.
Well, you can ask for the moon in the sky when you're pleading your case, but it doesn't mean you're going to get it.
That's true. That's a good point. And I think that often happens with Trump too. And again, that's a negotiating tactic. Well, I'm going to ask for $5 billion. What? You only want to give me $3 billion? Okay, I'll give in.
Oh, I've settled so many cases that way. You got a case that's worth about $5,000, and so you'd make a demand of $100,000. That's just the way it works.
Excuse me. Indeed. Oh, it's interesting. Prester John goes on to say that the Patriot Act harms U.S. citizens.
Absolutely.
and that we live in a police state and Trump is expanding it.
Now, that's the issue that's so hard to see through from my point of view, okay? Because, I was a liberal Democrat for how many umpteen years, 40 some years probably. And I worked for Obama. I worked hard on his campaign and served on the inaugural committee.
Mm-hmm.
And, I shook his hand, talked to him. It didn't take more than, I'd say, 9 months maximum for me to be completely disillusioned.
Right.
And so I started
It was
looking.
a big turning point for you.
Yeah, you remember, of course,
Yeah.
and disillusioned, and then started looking into things that might have otherwise be thought of as conspiracy theories or conspiratorial. And I find myself now unable to just take sides between Trump and Obama or anything like that, because I think the problem is bigger than that. It's a much bigger problem, and it is really the idea of imposing a technocracy on the whole world. And that's where I think everything is basically headed right now if we don't stand up and stop it. Now, whether Trump's police state is worse than Obama's police state, I don't know. But, do you want Jeff Bezos or do you want Elon Musk? To me, these billionaire tech geniuses are working ultimately for the military industrial complex, which wants to simply just stop having to deal with liberty.
Well, I just went back to a comment that I'd seen that Prester John had posted a few minutes back. How is this administration increasing liberty when Trump is empowering Palantir's expansion via government contracts?
It is true. It's just getting worse and worse. But would it not have gotten worse and worse if Harris had won? Is it really realistic to think that all this stuff could have been stopped if we had only, voted for Harris? I don't think so.
Well, I don't either, but I think that argument could be made because so much of what the Democrats do, they do behind the scenes. So they can pretend that they are in favor of something or supporting something or doing something when in the back rooms, they're doing exactly the opposite. And I think that that's where the arguments struggle. Because
exactly, because Joe Biden is a perfect example of that, because he's all he was running the scam in taking down Ukraine with Victoria Nuland and all that. This if there's anything unconstitutional, it's him for private interests, of which he had financial connection and his son is intimately involved in,
right,
to use U.S. government power to control and take down the government of Ukraine
and build his wealth.
And build his wealth.
Yeah. Well, and I think that one of the things that you and I are going to get ready to start seeing more of is that, the Democrats are starting to court the tech bros, as we saw this morning when we saw the news that our retiring Congressman Steny Hoyer, very powerful congressman, is endorsing his 31-year-old campaign manager who used to be a lobbyist for Oracle and Larry Ellison. Whoa.
You want to talk about that for a second? Because I have, with Harley Schlanger, talked about, Steny Hoyer
right,
a number of times, and how he's just, you can't fight him in
no.
What was this, the 5th district?
5th district
of Maryland,
yeah.
right?
Right.
You just can't. He is the key to, all the military-based contracts, so much of our economy just depended upon things that passed through his hands in one way or another. And our area has changed in a large way, in that there's been a great empowerment and of the African American people that have many of them lived here for many generations, and many of them have come from Washington D.C. or closer in to have a more of a more of a suburban lifestyle.
Yeah. I mean, the middle class professional Black community in the Washington area, yes, most of them live in the 5th District.
So what I'm thinking is that this is a district that should be progressive minded, trying to make life better for all the citizens and all that. But this chain from a person, let's give his name. I forgot.
Adrian Boafo, Boafo. So I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but
this young Adrian Boafo, do you have his bio right in front of you?
I don't. No. I have the article in front of me.
I mean, the article?
Yeah.
Yeah, it just gives a little bit of text about his background.
Boafo, a member of the Maryland House of Delegates representing Prince George's County, joined a crowded Democratic primary to succeed Hoyer in Maryland's 5th Congressional District. In addition to working on Hoyer's campaign, Boafo previously served on the Bowie City Council. Bowie is a small community in Prince George's County, and worked as a lobbyist for Oracle, the software behemoth co-founded by billionaire Larry Ellison.
And further into the article, it says that his parents came from Ghana, but he is educated here and
born and educated here. Yeah,
born and educated here. Sorry, and has a BA and a master of MBA. So he's clearly a business student who somehow gets connected to Oracle, and from Larry Ellison's Oracle gets fed into the Steny Hoyer staff. And, why Steny Hoyer? Well, because of the reasons that I just stated.
Exactly.
And he has that power nationally as well as in Maryland. So he's a huge, huge contact. So that setting him up like that, it's hard for me not to think that he's been set up to rise up.
Absolutely. But he has been embraced by the Hoyer machine, and is absolutely getting his path paved for him to leadership and powerful leadership in federal government.
And you said he was born in Arlington, Virginia?
Arlington, Virginia, yes.
So his ties to the 5th District of Maryland are minimal.
Well, I don't know how long he's lived in Bowie. He did go to college at the University of Maryland, Baltimore. So, okay. He's had some ties in Maryland for a while, and who knows, he was born there. His parents might have moved to Prince George's County. Yeah. Prince George's County has a significant African, not just African American, but actually African population, people who have immigrated from Ghana and Nigeria. And in fact, I had two coworkers who were Nigerian, who lived in Prince George's County. And this is an interesting comment here. Brightmore says, unmanned aircraft systems, or uncrewed aerial vehicle programs, have now become popular areas of study in universities. How long before rainbow drones? And the reason it's interesting is because the Maryland 5th District includes the Patuxent Naval Air Station and St. Inigo's, where that's what they work on, is UAVs. They actually have a branch now of the University of Maryland, and they have a whole UAV program there. And that's all part of the 5th District. So it's an interesting tie-in.
It sure is. So that bringing up the protege, imagine now it says groomed. That's a kind of a darker way to put it, but people like the young, the young American, the young World Economic Forum people, the Young Leaders Program of
Mm-hmm.
Klaus Schwab. I mean, this is what it sounds like.
Indeed.
But at the same time, you know, you're never going to forget the people that raised you up in the first place, that gave you these opportunities, that believed in you, that said, yes, you can do it.
Well, you know, in her first book, Michelle Obama talks about all of what Biden did for Barack Obama and how Biden took Barack Obama under his wing and gave him a national platform. And that, again, paved the way. And she might have even used words like that, paved the way for Obama's political career. So it to me seems very obvious that this is an ongoing activity with you know, these lifetime politicians who are finding their successors.
Yeah, when you think of when Biden has just been in my mind ever since I saw a clip of him maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago at a much younger stage, with dark hair, still balding but darker. Anyway, the question was, you know, is there pay to play in politics? And he says, well, you know, if somebody makes a big campaign contribution to me, they're going to want something in return, and I think you have to just acknowledge that's part of politics. And you know, he's obviously, you know, been the beneficiary of
Absolutely,
of that
of course.
That kind of
you don't get to be president of the United States without that.
Yeah. So this is why they took President Kennedy from us, because he was not into that crap.
You know, and I've got to add, not only is it the campaign contributions from the private corporations and, of course, the PACs that they support, but there's actually a type of PAC where elected officials can donate to each other's campaigns. So that's all part of the deal making in Congress. Elected officials can have their own PACs for donating money to other elected officials' campaigns or to other campaigns.
So if I'm rich and I want to give you, you know, the maximum, and then I've maxed out but I want to give you some more money because I've got another idea for a nice project you'd be interested in, then I can give it to your campaign fund for your allies.
Well, you can, yes. Or you can just use your PAC. Or you can give it to a nonprofit. If you want to stay anonymous, you can give it to a nonprofit, and then the nonprofit can make the donation to the PAC, and then you become anonymous. But no, the congressperson or the elected official has his or her own pool of money in a PAC that then, when we're in the cloakroom talking about, okay, if you'll vote for my legislation here, then I'll do this thing for you. Sometimes that thing that I'll do for you is give money to your campaign, because I can do that with my congressional PAC.
Okay.
Whoa. I want to post this before.
But that's not pay to play, though, is it?
Sure it is.
Sure it is.
Brightmore says Oracle and 2 other Yehudi companies just bought an American version of TikTok that will be safer for us and not so safe for anti-Israel commenters. I didn't realize it was Oracle. That was, of course it is. Yeah, with this TikTok thing too. So, you know, because Larry Ellison just bought a bunch of other media outlets. So also controlling the messaging.
That is so creepy to me. I wish that we could have American media controlled by Americans on behalf of Americans.
Ooh, here's another great example. Imagine that, says Klaus Schwab, groomed by Kissinger at Harvard.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, he's part of that whole special studies project that produced the book Prospect for America, which was the subject of my Minefields number 299, which I did this past Monday. So that connects very directly, because this is what I'm saying. Globalism is Kissinger's project. Kissinger was the project manager of globalism. And now is Trump.
Maybe the father of globalism.
Well, he was groomed, and so he is in a sense the person who carries out the mission to globalize everything. And if you read that Prospect for America and compare what they were planning with what we have right now, as I did in that show, it's really breathtaking to think, that's what's going on. It's the playing out of the Prospect for America, and now globalization to take over the world.
Well, one of the things that jumped out to me when you were reading that article is the whole notion of divide and conquer. This bifurcation once again, and I've ranted about bifurcation many times, but if you divide by two, then you're going to get, it makes it so easy. You're going to get two camps, for or against, pro, con, up, down, left, right, red, blue, in, out, whatever. But then it's so easy because you have the good guys and the bad guys, and you get to define, what do the good guys look like to the bad guys, and what do the bad guys look like to the good guys? And then you don't have to worry about complexity and shades of gray. You can just put it in all of these simple terms that then allow you to control the public. And that was exactly what was talked about in that article when it came to the Cold War. We had our democracy, and then this threat of communism and the Red Scare and all of these things that you and I grew up with, growing up with the Cold War. And it divided us by two. And it was the start of that effort to just control the public.
Yeah, and they've divided us so well that that we used to sing Masters of War by Bob Dylan on the left side, and now people are singing Masters of War by Bob Dylan on the right side.
Isn't that mind-boggling?
Yeah.
When we went to that Rage Against the War Machine, and there we were singing Masters of War on the Wash. I'm going to get choked up, because here we are on the Washington National Mall singing Masters of War in such a different context of how it was in the 60s and 70s. It to me was so illuminating as to what has happened in our world.
And that's the military industrial complex, is what that song is all about. So I wanted to close to complete the thought about Greenland and the snow job that I think Trump pulled off, because although he threatened to violate international law and threatened to act like an emperor from like Genghis Khan or whatever,
an invading conqueror,
right? That he never did actually do it. And I remember at a press conference where somebody asked him, "Well, are you still threatening to invade?" And he said, "Wait a minute! I never said that. I never said I was threatening to invade. You said I was threatening to invade." Well, you see, what he's done is he's planted the idea that he was threatening to invade to get a whole lot of people, to watch, just to be fascinated with the story and shocked, and oh, we can't possibly just invade a foreign country. That would be beyond the limits of America. But he was bluffing. He was bluffing the whole time.
Yeah.
And so then Denmark comes up with a deal that he brokered through NATO. And do you still have that article around that you could kind of summarize what he got? Because I think what he got was just about everything that you could want without having to take on the responsibility for, the national, like the rest of Greenland. Because what he's going to have is, you can have military bases, and they can do mineral extraction. and a bunch of other goodies. What was it?
I'm trying to find it in the article. I do have the article here. Um, uh, points Points under negotiation include greater American access to military bases and mineral extraction in Greenland, European operations in the Arctic, and oversight over investments to prevent Russia or China from gaining a foothold, according to two European officials who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive diplomacy.
See, I think that's a fantastic deal.
Yeah,
I mean,
and didn't cost us a dime.
and the bit I've studied of what's going on in the future for the Arctic trade routes is that it is the old Northwest Passage that goes between Greenland and Canada. That's where most of the traffic is going to go. And so by having military bases along the edge of Greenland there, you can control who goes through.
Exactly. And they're saying that as the Arctic ice melts, it becomes much more passable. And there's actually two possible routes.
So there would come a time when China would find it to their benefit to start using that route instead of going on, so it'd be shorter. And of course, Russia would have, instant increase in their Arctic, but they've already got so much that they were willing to say, go ahead to Trump. They said, you can do that. So what he did with Europe was basically held a big stick, just like Teddy Roosevelt said, walk softly, but carry a big stick.
Yep.
And that's what he's been doing. So I was pretty amazed at the outcome, because the ability to protect that trade route is probably the most interest, the interest behind Trump's investors, like Goldman Sachs, for instance, or the Kushner, all of the money that sits behind the transportation system, the world transport system. He's now got control over what's going to be one of the most important trade routes in history.
And, as Prester John says, those mineral contracts in Greenland are going to U.S. billionaires, not U.S. citizens. Yes, that is true. Same with the transportation opportunities and the money to be made from that. That's a fact, yes. Yeah. But it is the outcome he wanted. And that's the point, I think, that we're talking about here, is that he went to Davos with all of this bluster and everybody laughed at him, and it was a bluff, and he got exactly what he wanted with no cost to us.
All I can say is, if giving the billionaires more money is the price of keeping my liberty, I'll take the liberty. It's only when you give billionaires money that are going to take away my liberty that it troubles me.
Well, you talked about the surveillance, that takes away our liberty.
Absolutely.
I think that there's potential in a lot of these situations for our liberties to be compromised. And that's the kind of thing that we have to watch out for, that we have to worry about, and maybe worry about is a little strong, but we have to be aware of and focus on and act on when the occasion is appropriate. Because yes, we have to protect our liberties.
And that's where Europe has failed. Europe has, locked people up for what they post on the internet. And that is a big failure in terms of liberty. I would not be comfortable if I was in Europe running this show over there. They would find something that I said and say, oh, you just violated this new law that we passed.
It's been happening in the United States too. So that's one of the ones that I very much worry about, is our First Amendment rights to speak out. People have lost jobs. People have been, people have had consequences for speaking out under this administration. And I am terrified for the First Amendment.
Yeah, and in view of the connection to a foreign country that seems to have a lot of control over our institutions of government, it is because I think a lot of this spying on Americans is driven by some foreign interest as well as
Indeed, yeah.
whatever American corporations wanted to learn. Well, in terms of free speech, let's get back to our chat room and see what other folks have got on their minds.
Well, take a look. There's a lot of, Brightmore and Corky have been very, very active. It's hard to sometimes talk to you and, keep up with them too.
Keep it up, guys. I enjoy your conversations. I read them after the show.
Yeah. Well, this is nice. Imagine that says, I so enjoy your conversations. And then Corky says, yes, this show is a wonder weekly. Truly dialogical.
Dialogical.
I like that. Thank you, Corky.
Well, I wonder if everybody's ready for the big snow and ice storm that's coming. Are you guys ready? I think we're good. We've stocked up enough for a week or so, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, really, and somebody on social media that I was reading a post about the grocery stores being a little insane right now, and somebody said, really, 2 days is probably as much as one would be,
around here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of parts of the country is
Well, that's true.
looking at some real problems, with ice on the trees and the power lines and all.
And where we are, they're saying the ice it might be very heavy. And they're saying over an inch of ice, chances are you're going to lose power. And they're saying we might get that much ice. So we'll have to see. We might lose power. And one of the things that we don't have, much to your chagrin, is a fireplace. So if we lose power, heat is the only thing. I mean, we have a little generator, and we have a little hot pot, and we have enough food that we could open some cans and, we'd be fine. But heat is going to be the challenge. We'll just have to wear lots and lots and lots of clothes. Get under lots of blankets.
We had a fireplace in my parents' house. It was so nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so nice. A nice big brick wall, with a fireplace in it, and sitting around a fire to me,
Oh, you love that.
Oh, we've driven out to West Virginia to a cabin just so I could find some place
right.
that I could rent that had a real fire and not one of those silly gas things.
And you sat in front of that fire the whole weekend.
I did.
Stoking that fire. When I was little, when I was about 9 years old, we lived in an apartment in Houston, but for reasons it's not clear to me, that apartment had a fireplace. And my dad used to light up the fire and turn on the air conditioning.
Brightmore makes a comment I don't want to pass by. Let's build data centers to make our power grid stronger. And yet that's what's going on. And I saw Larry Fink saying basically we're going to need a lot of electric power. We have to have it because if we're going to build all these data centers, where does it stop? How many data centers? They've got a lot already, and the using of our energy and using of our water, and we're going to let them do it. That's them taking over.
Well, stop using AI.
I only ask Grok a couple of questions a day. I mean, I'm not hooked on Grok. Believe me, I can quit anytime.
Because that's why it has become, or so we're told. I'm always skeptical about what we are told, but we are told that it's AI that is taking up all of this need for, or creating this need for, these huge, huge data centers.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Okay, I'd rather not have AI. We don't need it. Let's be intelligent ourselves.
It all comes from the military, though. I mean, this is why Palantir exists, because the military, DARPA, they want this. So until we as a country are willing to say, you know what? We don't need this elaborate spy technology because we're strong and we're Americans and, we believe in liberty. So, you know, we don't need that stuff. Um, until we can do that, we're going to be stuck with it because every country in the world is doing it, that can do it. And, the people being people, we've fallen into the trap of existing in social media to the extent that it does affect our thinking. It
Yes.
absolutely can frame, our opinions on things and divide us, as you were saying earlier, into, yeah, I mean, personally, I've suffered a lot of losses because of what I've said on social media.
Indeed. Indeed. Well, I will be following the monks on social media, and I will be saying prayers for their safety as they get into the part of the country that is being affected by the storms. I think those monks and their message of peace and unity is just so important, and it inspires me every day to try to be a little bit nicer and more peaceful and uh, united with my fellow human beings.
May you be healthy and happy and have peace.
The monks say one of the things that this lead monk says is to write down, "Today is my peaceful day." And so I've been doing that too, writing down. So today is my peaceful day, and hopefully today is your peaceful day too.
And one day the whole world will be saying, today is my peaceful day.
Wouldn't that be nice?
I think that's the dream.
Be safe, you guys.
We'll see you guys Monday with the latest edition of Undo the Coup. So I hope you can join me then at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Bye-bye now. Thanks, Marcia.
Thanks, John.